What's going on, guys? Welcome to In the Zone. I'm your host, Garrison Roy, and I think this is the first podcast for 2025. So happy 2025, everybody. But with this episode, obviously, we have the different rants, which I'm going to get into today. We have full length interviews, we have mental minutes to help get into that mental side of being in the zone and also different zones of training, right? But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and jump into this one. But stay tuned towards the end to kind of give you a little bit of sneak peek on what's ahead for the coming year of the podcast. So for this one, obviously, kind of a little bit of craze over the past week was the Juco versus NCAA ruling. And again, I just kind of wanted to spill some of my thoughts here on that and kind of what's evolved. I didn't want to, react too quickly to that, post. But for those of you who don't know, there was a ruling out on Diego Pavia. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it's the quarterback for Vanderbilt, right? So apparently he went to high school and then to a junior college, and they found a ruling on him that says, hey, none of these years while you were at a JUCO is going to go towards his NCAA eligibility, which at the time, and I'm also a JUCO product, to kind of boil this down. If you go to school for 2 years at a JUCO without a red shirt or anything like that, that counts, and you play, that counts towards 2 years of eligibility towards NCAA, traditionally within the past, right? But now what they're saying is since he went for a year, or I couldn't remember exactly how long he went to the JUCO for, but now he gets that extra year of eligibility. And again, this is all kind of stipulations amidst outside of the COVID year and things like that. So a lot of those guys are kind of filtering out of the college realm. But there was a lot of stipulation and people saying, oh, this applies to everyone or this does this. From as far as I know, it only is applying to Diego. Now, could they rule something else to where it passes throughout all the sports? Who knows? And I think that would definitely change the course of different levels of various sports, but definitely baseball, right? So think of it as really if you don't have the 2 years of eligibility, if you're at a JUCO, I think that's a huge opportunity for development. But I also think a lot of guys who are at that upper echelon tier, right? That's a different camp of guys who might go to the big major D1s or things like that. Maybe they got drafted out of high school, but they're not quite ready yet. Really, JUCO's become now almost like a farm league in a way, right? Where they can go there, they can play, they can get some innings under their belt. They don't quite want to commit to the major league level but at the same time, seeing how this game is evolving, a lot of people are starting to sign guys at younger ages, right? Because of just the longer lifespan of them and how some of them are looking like they're starting to peak earlier, or even expediting a lot of these guys that are coming straight out of college to jump up, like a Paul Skeens, for example. And again, kind of speaking into different extremes, and everyone's different, but it is something to kind of keep in mind for that particular peer group, right? So you have that one, you have the group that needs to develop a little bit more, or maybe they're trying to not be ineligible for the draft, so they're going to go JUCO for 2 years. But even then, after that, then they have a whole another 4 years of eligibility. I mean, I don't think it's going to deter a whole lot of guys. I mean, the major chunk of college baseball players are still going to want to go play D1, higher echelon D2s before they go to a JUCO, unless they think that they have that chance of, potential draft eligibility, right? But it does also affect, like I was saying before, it does affect pro ball, right? So let's say, for example, you have that upper echelon player who wants to go to JUCO to develop a little bit longer or play higher level players, for example. And a great example of that in years past was Bryce Harper. He was a year ahead of me, so kind of a good example for me to kind of lead into. So within his, I think, junior year, he went transferred to a community college, junior college, right, and actually played there to get his GED and then bounced to get drafted because he wanted to show and prove that he could play against better players. And believe not 100% positive on this, but I believe he played that entire JUCO year with a wood bat, which is absurd and just kind of showed a little bit more of a higher level of play that he actually was. He was definitely on a different planet compared to some of those guys. But being out there in the Vegas, I mean, it is still pretty competitive baseball out there, right? So you have that type of guy who's, I think it's going to affect, if any level of play, it's going to affect the high school level the most, right? And again, now I understand like there's travel ball teams and showcases that you can go to kind of go up against higher level players to where you're not just bound by where you live and the competition that you have, right? Because the scouts are going to keep that into account where it's like, hey, like someone in rural Mississippi is probably not going to be, playing against guys throwing 90, 95 plus. So they might have a higher batting average or, better success against weaker level hitters with pitching, what have you, right? So they're not going to put as much stock into a guy unless they see a whole lot of potential and they see how they measure up with some of these guys at like, your perfect game or your area code games, things like that, right? So I think if that JUCO rule is in place, I think I could see a lot of juniors and seniors literally just bouncing out of school because there's no reason. Again, high school diploma is one thing, but you could still get a GED and go to college. You might have some remedial classes involved there, but again, it's the same. At the end of the day, you still get a diploma, right? So I could see a lot of those guys bouncing out and jumping to a JUCO. But now with that, again, you have the higher upper echelon guys and the guys who are still trying to develop and go and play early. Now you have a wider gap of guys who are going to have room for development. So it might push out a lot of guys who might be those late bloomers within the JUCO ranks, and they might go to your D3s or your D2s. Okay, so you can kind of see how if this rule change was a thing, how it does affect literally almost every level of play in the game. Um, but again, this is just me ranting and kind of me mulling over and thinking over thoughts of if this was to come into play, how much that would actually change a lot of things. It could be for the better, could be a little bit different, right? I mean, hockey's kind of in that general direction. So, kind of curious to hear your guys' thoughts on this, what you would like to see or hear talk about a little bit more. But like I mentioned earlier in this episode, wanted to talk a little bit about where we're going in 2025 and what you guys can do to help, right? So obviously I come on here earlier on in episodes. I've asked, hey, for you guys to submit anyone that you want or any questions that you have, and I've been pretty responsive to all those or anything that you guys send over to me. However, I do think, I've been posting in the past couple of years, roughly around 2 times a week or maybe 1 time a week. But I want to hone in on really more of the quality of these podcasts for you guys and not just doing a post for the sake of doing a post within the week. Now, unless you think that they have value, and if I keep pumping out value week after week, I'll keep doing it, right? But I want you guys to make sure that you're getting the value that you're tuning in for, right? I don't want to just give you a splurge of words and things that I've probably said in the past, although I do kind of have similar trends uh, within this, but I want this to evolve as everyone else, as the listeners are evolving with their thought process, with what needs to be involved. So I want your guys' input. Please, please, please reach out to me if you have my number or you have the text message down below right there. That's not my direct number, but I do see that it does go to the platform on Buzzsprout that I use, or any comments that you want on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music. I look at all of them. So would love for you guys to have some input, maybe have a few other things, Q&As, or maybe some other things that you want. Maybe it's outside the game of baseball. Maybe you guys want some more health and wellness stuff, which I'm going to be kind of introducing a little bit more of in general because it does help everyone stay in the zone of health, right? So I could see myself kind of expanding into that a little bit more in future episodes, as well as maybe personal finance, not necessarily, hey, I can't give you direct advice to go, invest in Bitcoin or all these things like that. But, just really, really simple things like, hey, this is how you budget, or things like that. I can see that kind of being very, very helpful and very, very practical for everyone. So it'll be different zones within everyone's life that they can kind of tune into this as well. Um, so yeah, we'll just love for you guys to give them as much as you can with this, or maybe even if you want to go a completely different route. I've seen people who post certain things. They're like, "Hey, what do you think about this company or this company or this company?" And to be honest, I'm pretty far removed from it all and don't have any non-competes anymore with anyone or anything, or really don't have any direct beef or competition in my personal opinion. So if you guys have any questions on who I used to work for, who I used to maybe train with or train for, right? Or I've pretty much had just about every single experience within the game and coached everywhere within the Southeast. Uh, to kind of give you a general synopsis of that, West Coast might be a little off topic, but would love to get someone in on that. Um, Particularly like the bigger places like your drive lines in Washington or Arizona. I know some guys who've been at those places, and I'll be bringing those guys on and probably have a few repeated guests. But obviously, as their experiences are changing and their thought processes are evolving and going forward, we're going to also kind of dive into that a little bit more as well. But yeah, super pumped for this, you guys. And let me know what you guys want to hear coming forward and stay in the zone.